Hello and welcome to part 2 of the wire woven drop bead pendant. This video focuses on creating the bail and finishing the pendant, so if you haven't already you might want to watch part 1 first. So just to recap, I'm using a top drill bead. This is a faceted carnelian and it measures about 14 by 9mm. Also want some 1mm diameter wire and 0.25mm diameter wire. And then for the tools you need flat nose or chain nose pliers, round nose pliers, 6-step pliers if you've got them, wire cutters, nylon jaw pliers, an awl and some liver of sulphur to patina at the end. So as I mentioned at the end of part 1, you've got several options for the bail with having the 4 wires to work with. I'm going to eventually use all 4 wires, but I'm only going to weave on 2 of them. So I'm going to start by bending the middle 2 wires back at the top of the weave that we've already made. And then I'm going to weave the 3-3 weave that we used for the bottom part of the frame. So wrapping 1 wire 3 times and then both wires 3 times and continuing that to the approximate length that I think I need. Now I'm going to shape this part of the bail. So I'm just going to move the outside wires out of the way. And then using my bailing pliers, I'm just going to hold the wires very gently and pull those over to create most of the bail. I then want to kick those wires back a bit so I can complete that loop. And then I'll just get that bail circular so those wires are now touching the weave. Then I'm going to take those outside wires around the bailing pliers in the opposite direction, just to help keep that bail nice and secure. I'll make sure I've got full loops and everything's nice and round. Now that weave has expanded out a bit whilst I've been shaping the bail, so I'm just going to push it back together to compress that weave, make sure it's all nice and tight. And then I just need to weave a little bit more to go right the way around the bail. I'm going to finish this bit off by taking the weaving wire through to the previous bit of weaving, just to make sure everything's locked together and nice and tight. So I'm going to use my awl to make a small space between the previous weaves. Then I can thread the weaving wire through to the back. And then thread it back to the front in the same way. And that's the bail completed. So now we need to decide how to use these wires to embellish the pendant. And I'm going to start with the weaving wire that's attached, wrapping a coil around the furthest right of those bail wires. Now these wires are going to move across to the left. So the wire that's already there, which is the first one I separated out, I want to move out of the way, and that's actually going to loop over to the right. So I'm just going to gently curve that over for now, just so it's out of the way. Now I'm going to start some more 3-3 weave on the 2 leftmost wires from the bail. So I'm just going to use my flat nose pliers to make sure those 2 wires are sitting parallel. And then taking a new piece of the 0.25 weaving wire, I'm just going to wrap round the second wire in a couple of times. And push that up to the top, and this will meet the weave coming down from the bail. I'm then going to take that weaving wire down between those 2 wires, just to keep everything neat. And then I'll wrap 3 times around the outside wire, followed by 3 times over both wires, and then 3 times over the outside wire, and continue the 3-3 weave in that way. I can then cut off the excess weaving wire at the start of that weave. With the rightmost wire that I coiled, I'm going to take that over the top of that weave, just under the bail. And then I'll curve it round because it'll be hooking behind that 3-3 weave. I'll then follow that curve with the final wire from the bail. Now I'm going to switch to the right side of the frame, and with that wire that I moved over from the left hand side, I'm going to make a small loop that sits over the weave. I'll start this by hand, but I can use my baling pliers and my flat nose pliers just to get the shape the way I want it. Now that wire will be entwined around the frame, so I'll just get the curve right on it. And then before I fix that one, I'm going to take the topmost wire and entwine that onto the lower wire. So I'm going over it, then I'm going to twist it right the way round and back, so it's kind of going down again. You can spend a bit of time just getting that the way that you want it. And then I'll just shorten that lower wire a little bit so I can thread it through the frame. And then take it right the way around the frame in the same way. This is worth taking a bit of time on to make sure the wires are where you want them and the shapes are how you like. And then you can just cut the ends of those wires off so they're flush. And then we just need to finish the left hand side. And with those woven 2 wires, I'm going to put a twist in the weave in the same way as we did with the lower part of the frame. So I'm just going to hold it gently, twist it around and curve it at the same time. And then I can just shape it to hit the frame about where I want it to. Then I'm going to trim that bare wire a little bit just to make it easier to work with. And wrap that quite tightly around that 3x3 weave. I'm going to make quite a sweeping loop in that, just to tie in with the rest of the embellishment really. And then I can trim the end of the wire and tuck it behind that 3x3 weave. Now I'm going to follow the bare wire with that coiled wire just round to the back, but I'm going to take that coiled wire around the back over the weaving of the frame. I'll stitch it in to hold it to the frame in the same way as I did with the bail. And then just to hold everything in place, I'll put a few more coils on that wire. I then just need to decide how to finish that bit of wire off. So I'm going to make a small curve on the end, trim the wire, and then tuck it into the frame just at the top of the bead. I can then trim off all the other ends of the weaving wire. I'd only left them just to see if I needed them to anchor any of the bits of the embellishment. And then to finish off those final 2 wires, I'm going to take the weaving wire through the frame and anchor it together in the same way as I've done before. And then continue the coil for a few wraps on the top wire. I'll then bend that wire into a tight curve until it meets the frame again. And then I can trim that and tuck it into the frame. I'm then going to follow that curve around with the final wire, trim it and tuck it in the same way. And then there's just one last job I want to do, and that's open out the sides of the bail a little bit. So I'm just going to carefully ease those 2 wires apart from the weave. And that finishes the pendant with just the liver of sulphur to add if you want to patina it. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the videos, please press the like button below. Don't forget you can subscribe to my channel and head over to my website for more hints, tips and projects. See you soon!